another episode of Faultlines. We get you all the stories that we are tracking this week. First up, Israel amps up the strikes on Houthis. Many people have been dead from these strikes in Yemen's capital, even as by all indications, by all accounts, this is a fight that isn't ending anytime soon. Russia accuses Ukraine of drone attacks in the Kursk region. Strikes have damaged a transformer at a nuclear power plant. Will the Russia-Ukraine conflict escalate from here on? We get you all those details. Russia launches massive strike on Kyiv. EU delegation building has been damaged. The EU envoy to Ukraine says at least 10 people have been killed in this fresh round of destruction. Venezuela deploys warships, drones amidst US build-up after US sends warships and nuclear subs to the Caribbean. Is this going to be yet another flashpoint in the Caribbean? And will the world need to take notice of that? We get you details on that. And Russia unveils hypersonic missile warship dubbed the Sea Monster or the Sea Terminator. Why is this unlike any other piece of weaponry? Only Faultlines has the answer. Now viewers, Israel this week carried out airstrikes deep inside Yemen after Iran-backed Houthis launched a new type of missile at several Israeli targets. At least 4 people have been killed and nearly 70 have been injured in this fresh round of escalation in the Houthi-controlled capital of Sana'a. The Israeli Defense Forces have said that the attacks hit the presidential palace, 2 power stations and fuel depots. Defense Minister of Israel has vowed the Houthis would pay many times over for every missile fired. The Houthis, meanwhile, promised continued support for Gaza, drawing praise from Iran's supreme leader, who called their actions the right course. So you're sensing that this isn't a conflict that's ending. In fact, both sides seem to indicate that it could, in fact, build up further. How long? Faultlines will have that answer for you. But first up, let me tell you the timeline of this conflict and how in the last 18 months this has continued to escalate on both sides. First up, in 2023, this started when the Gaza war spilled over. Houthis declared support for Hamas. This is right after that heinous and deadly attack that took place on 7th of October 2023. And that is when Houthis also fired at Israeli territory, and it became Israel being under attack from several ends. This was in December 2023. Houthis began the drone and missile attacks and launches towards Israel. As I said, there were several attempts being made on several fronts, and Houthis opened yet another front against Israel at a time when it was battling and taking on Hamas immediately after the 7th of October attack. Now, in 2024 is when the US and UK intercept multiple Houthi projectiles in the Red Sea. Red Sea is a very important connectivity link for the world, which is why in the Red Sea you have huge amount of commercial ships that pass through that, and which is why US and UK also intercept these missiles, ensuring that connectivity doesn't get impacted. Let's move ahead and tell you what happened in July of last year when Israel-linked ships were actually attacked. This was between the January to June time when several of these Israeli ships were targeted, were attacked. These are acts of war, viewers. This is an act of war when a commercial ship or a ship belonging to another country is attacked. This is an act of war indicating that you are willing to escalate this further. So this happened last year. And then after that, Israel conducted limited strikes against several of the Houthi sites, indicating that Israelis and the Israeli dispensation wants to ensure that it is able to address the Houthi threat that continues on its way. In July to December 2024 is when the Houthis hit Israeli with the long-range drones and missiles, indicating that they have deeper ability than what has been known so far. This was also a show of intent, not just to Israel, but to Israel's allies, that Houthis have the muscle, have the ability to be able to hit long distance. And that tells you the amount of arsenal that is there, indicating it could go on forever, or at least longer than what looked at that time. Between that period, July to December 2023, regional shipping lines were also disrupted. And these shipping lanes, when they get disrupted, it means that the world over, commercial shipping lines will be impacted. It means alternate lines will have to be identified. It will also mean that this is not just an Israel versus Houthi thing. It's a conflict that is now taking and impacting all commercial lines going through that Red Sea connectivity corridor. Next up, in 2025, this year, till now, the conflict has intensified with a tit-for-tat strike. There is an attack from the Houthis. Israel responds in the same coin. And likewise, to ensure that both sides are able to also tell their domestic audiences that they have the muscle and the ability to take down their rival. Houthis expand attacks on Israeli and Western assets, showing that they do not want to end this anytime soon. And lastly, Israel warns of direct consequences to the Houthis after the latest round of escalation that has happened. It also tells you, viewers, that how long this conflict may actually stretch. We are inching towards the second anniversary of the conflict, of the deadly attack, telling you that Houthis have also been well armed. One can talk about the damage that they have inflicted in the last 2 years, but they seem to be well armed, indicating that the world needs to be better prepared for what happens next. In fact, let's play out this report, viewers, that tells you exactly how the conflict stands right now, and then we come back and tell you how long this could actually stretch. Take a look.
From the Red Sea to Tel Aviv, the Middle East is on edge yet again, with another war front on fire. As sirens and explosions fill the air in Sana'a, as Israeli fighter jets rained missiles on the Yemeni capital. The targets, the presidential palace, 2 power stations and a fuel storage site. The aim? To strike back after Houthis fired cluster munitions at Israel last week.
ארמון הנשיאות של החות'ים בתימן ותקף מאגרי דלק ותחנות כוח וחשמל. אנחנו ממשיכים בהטלת מצור אווירי וימי ופוגעים במטרות תשתית שמשמשות לקידום הטרור החות'י. על כל טיל שישגרו לעבר ישראל, החות'ים ישלמו בריבית דריבית. היום הבאנו על החות'ים מכת חושך ועלטה, ובהמשך תהיה גם מכת בכורות.
While the attack is not the first Israeli operation against the Houthis, it's one of the heaviest attacks since the emergence of this new front. Tel Aviv asserts these sites were being used by the Houthis for military purposes. At least 4 people were killed and 90 others were wounded in the strikes. Images from Sana'a show burning fuel storage depots and damaged apartment blocks. This escalation marks a new phase in the war, with cluster munitions being used in attacks, which are banned by more than 100 countries. These weapons disperse a large number of tiny bomblets from a rocket, missile or artillery shell that scatters them in mid-flight over a wide area, aimed at creating more devastation. This new escalation doesn't only affect Israel and Yemen, it also impacts global trade. Since late 2023, the Houthis have regularly threatened cargo ships, forcing shipping companies to take the longer route around the Cape of Good Hope. And this significantly increases costs. Israel's latest strikes hope to limit future Houthi attacks. The question is, will it? Or will this mark a new fault line in the Middle East?
Viewers, this is the deepest fault line that runs in the Middle East, one that continues to bear its ugly face again and again. The conflict and the cycle of conflict is not showing any signs of ending, telling you that both sides are willing to escalate this going on. And at stake are lives on both ends. Even as you talk about the Houthis, the fact that they continue to be rearmed by Iran tells you that Tehran wants to prolong this further. Let's get in Vishal Vivek, my colleague, to tell us more in terms of the arming, the rearming, the funding, the refunding of Houthis. And Vishal, that is something that's pretty much central to identifying a long-term solution, isn't it? Till the time Tehran continues to fund these parts of the axis of resistance, this will continue.
Well, Gaurie, the only reason why Houthis are still standing is because Iran supports them. 90% of the missiles, the weapons that are, sent to Houthis are facilitated by Iran through its various mechanisms, through its secret mechanisms. So that gives you a scale up to which Iran is involved in this conflict. You mentioned the axis of resistance. It's weakened as Iran itself was weakened, but Houthis seem to be the strongest one because Hamas and Hezbollah both have almost been wiped out. Houthis continue to, fire on Israeli territory thousands of kilometers, almost 2,000 kilometers away. So that gives you scale of the damage that they can do. And this time they chose sub-munitions because nobody knew they had access to these kind of weapons, but they were indeed involved in these kind of attacks. And that's what Israel retaliated against and said that for each of these sub-munitions, they will pay a heavy price, and they indeed did, because at least 10 people were killed in these strikes, and Houthis continue to reel under these attacks. How long Israel will continue to attack Houthis, and will it be on the scale of the attacks against Hamas or Hezbollah? That will have to be seen. But Houthis certainly are in the most amount of pressure than they have ever been in the last 2 or 3 years.
All right, we leave it there. Vishal Vivek telling us more in terms of how long this conflict may continue, given the fact that resources still remain for Houthis from Tehran. All right, turning attention now to the other conflict that is raging on. Russia has accused Ukraine of launching a wave of drone attacks, including one that damaged a transformer at the Kirk's nuclear plant, forcing a reactor to run at half capacity. Authorities said the fire was contained and radiation levels remain normal. Moscow claims nearly 100 and hundreds of drones were intercepted across multiple regions, including near St. Petersburg. Ukraine did not officially comment on this, but said that it struck back against Russian targets as the country marked Independence Day. This is, remember, a lot of optics here at play. Ukrainian President Zelensky has now vowed that Kyiv would never lose its freedom, even as fighting grinds on in Donetsk and both sides continue to exchange prisoners of war. That's a very small aspect of any relief that still is yet to come in for the people of that region. I want to play out this report to tell you exactly what the latest round of conflict is and how significant could a potential nuclear threat be if a Russian nuclear plant is attacked in this conflict. Take a look.
Hundreds of thousands dead. Peace talks stored, and Europe's deadliest war since World War II still rages on. And recently, a dangerous new front emerged. Russia accused Ukraine of launching drone strikes that ignited a fire at a nuclear power plant. Russian officials say several power and energy facilities were targeted. The fire was quickly extinguished with no injuries reported, and radiation levels remain normal. But the larger picture, it's far from harmless. This accusation isn't just about a fire, it's about a line being crossed. Last year, Putin quietly changed Russia's nuclear doctrine to, if a nuclear nation backed by a nuclear ally attacks Russia, it could be considered a nuclear-level threat. And if the attacker belongs to a military bloc, that threat becomes collective. So as foreign weapons pour into Ukraine, Russia is watching every move. And now with strikes hitting near nuclear sites, the question is no longer how long this war will stretch on, but just how far Russia is willing to take it. With drones striking nuclear nerves and doctrines rewriting red lines, the war in Ukraine is no longer just regional. It poses a threat to go radioactive.
Так б'є справедливість. Так б'є Україна, коли її заклики до миру не чують. Скільки разів ми пропонували припинення вогню, скільки разів ми казали, ми хочемо тиші, ми прагнемо миру.
Bureau Report, NDTV.
Now, viewers, if a Russian nuclear plant is attacked, one can for certainly say that it is set to escalate into a much bigger fight. And let's get in Disha Bakshi, my colleague, to tell us more in terms of the possibility of whether or not a nuclear fight actually exists. Disha, this is something that Vladimir Putin has said in the past as well, that nuclear is an option that he will evaluate. And if a drone strike actually comes and takes down a Russian nuclear plant, that possibility becomes even more real, doesn't it?
Absolutely, Gaurie, because look, this new phase of the Russia-Ukraine war, where now Moscow has accused Ukraine of striking its nuclear sites, really brings it to a dangerous new phase where there's no really red line anymore. There's nothing that both sides are not willing to do in order to gain back territory. And especially this nuclear site, which is in Kirks, which is a very crucial territory and has been a very major war front between Russia and Ukraine in the past 3 years, which is why the strike was even more important. And now Moscow has said that after the strike, their nuclear power plant's capacity and its capabilities have gone down to 50%. So definitely a major impact on this nuclear plant. And really, it also gives Russian President Putin the justification to take this conflict to even more new dangerous heights and causing even more devastation. Because we've had the much-awaited Trump-Putin summit in Alaska a couple of weeks ago, but nothing really came out of it. There was no breakthrough, and even now there's not been any date set for that much-awaited meeting between Russian President Putin and Ukraine President Zelensky. So in a sense, peace talks are also stalled. And now Ukraine going ahead and striking Russian nuclear sites really gives the Kremlin the opportunity to say, hey, look, that you are striking our nuclear sites, so we're going to hit back in equal measure. So really it brings this conflict to a very, very dangerous new height.
Indeed, Disha, and the possibility of that nuclear war becoming even more real and significant is something that should worry all of us. Thanks much for that update. Well, viewers, on that note, we're slipping into a break. But coming up on the other side is the Russian sea monster. Why is this piece of weaponry called the Terminator? We tell you all those details on the other side of the fault line. Stay with us. Viewers, it's now time to turn attention to South America. If you thought that there are no fault lines in that part of the world, well, this is a show that tells you just how deep the ones running there are. Venezuela has deployed warships and drones to its coast after America dispatched an amphibious squadron, a missile cruiser and a nuclear submarine on nearby waters. And in fact, Washington has said that the build-up is aimed at drug cartels, but it comes as the Trump administration doubled its bounty on Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro to $50 million, accusing him of cocaine trafficking. And Venezuela has denounced the move as a grave threat to regional peace. President Maduro has called up militias and sent 15,000 troops to the Colombian border, though analysts downplay the chances of a direct U.S. strike, but it still remains. Military convoys were seen passing through central Venezuela after the government announced it will send military vessels to the Caribbean Sea and other waters to combat drug trafficking. The move, which was announced by the country's defense minister, comes as tensions with the US simmer over the deployment of 3 warships to the region. In the central state, at least 4 tanks, 3 tactical trucks carrying troops and a truck with an army container were spotted headed to the west. That tells you just how significant this possible contestation could be between Venezuela and the US, and unlikely to end anytime soon. All right, shifting focus now to a piece of weaponry that is integral to fault lines. Well, Russia has unveiled its newest symbol of naval might, which is the frigate Admiral Amelko, ominously nicknamed the Sea Monster. This is a class of warship that is part of Project 22350. It's designed to carry hypersonic missiles, giving it both speed as well as lethal reach. Pro-Russian commentators have gone a step further, calling it a sea terminator. The launch forms a crucial step in Moscow's $100 billion naval modernization push as Russia sets its sights on cementing maritime dominance by 2050. Whether it's Sea Monster or whether it's Sea Terminator, it's bound to change the rules of naval game. Take a look.
In a bold display of military might, Russia has just launched its latest maritime juggernaut, Admiral Amelko, a new frigate, ominously nicknamed the Sea Monster. Armed with precision hypersonic weaponry and part of Russia's staggering $100 billion naval expansion, this ship signals a dramatic shift in naval power dynamics. Unveiled just days ago, the Admiral Amelko marks a step change in Russian naval ambitions. Designed to dominate both subsurface and surface threats with unprecedented stealth and lethal speed. This deadly frigate is built to deliver devastating long-range strikes. With its on-board hypersonic missiles, it can engage targets at speeds and ranges that challenge existing missile defense systems. A clear message to global navies. Russia is elevating its reach and precision. This isn't merely one more warship. It represents the culmination of a sweeping modernization drive. Consider this. In half a decade, Russia has launched more than 24 vessels that include submarines. As part of a broader $100 billion naval expansion, the Admiral Amelko reflects Russia's ambition to reassert dominance in the Arctic, Baltic, and beyond. The integration of stealth design, advanced missile systems, and rapid launch capability raises the stakes for NATO and allied forces. The world watches as the Sea Monster prowls the waves, leaving a ripple that may reshape naval strategy for years to come. Vishal Vivek for NDTV World.
That brings us to an end of this edition of Fault Lines. Next week we come again with yet another conflict, yet another war, yet another fault line decoded just for you.